Hello, I'm Alex Mansfield, the host of Manny Talks Shooting, and welcome to another episode. This is the shooting podcast where I talk to individuals all across the shooting industry. We'll talk competition, self-defense, concealed carry. If you like this content, check out our YouTube channel, Manny Talks Shooting. And without further ado, let's get to this episode. Manny Talks Shooting is proudly presented to you by D2 Custom Guns. Did you know that Phil the Groundhog isn't the only thing Puxatawny, Pennsylvania is famous for? That's right, D2 Custom Guns, the home of Dan Heizenreiter and one of the best, fabulous 2011 builders in the country. So make sure you guys go check him out, D2 Custom, anywhere you can see him on the social media, Facebook, Instagram, go check him out. If you see myself, Patches Reader, anyone with the D2 Custom Guns, make sure you go check him out, and you will thank me later. Now, let's get on to the show. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Manny Talk Shooting, the shooting podcast on the internet, because you are obsessed with the internet, and that's how you absorb content. So that's where you're going to find it. It's not going to be sent to you on a DVD or a DVR or a VHS, if you are even old enough to know what a VHS is. Most USPSA members probably do. You young people, yeah, I don't know about you yet. But anyway, this show is proudly presented to you by D2 Custom Guns. Go get out one of the finest 2011 pistols on the market. You're running out of time to get it before the off season's over, so just order it now anyway. Thank me later. But without further ado, we are sitting down with two gentlemen who will have a big instrumental part in fixing the system, the Classifier system. And we're sitting down with Kurt McKenna and Billy Barton. How you doing, gentlemen?
Good. What's up, man? Thanks for having us on.
No problem. It was cool. I was originally, I don't know what it was like. Soon as things dropped, I hit up Kurt and I was like, we got to do a show. And then he's like, okay, but wait, Billy wants to jump on now. So we made it happen. So, what's funny is this is the second show I've recorded with two people other than me in a row. I'm like, what is this? It's not normal, but it'll be okay. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, but I figured it'd be good to get Billy in here instead of just talking to a math nerd.
I mean, yeah, we do have to have the DEI hire on the. But it's all good. People, if you don't know Billy, go back to listen to the episode. I can't even remember what episode it was that Billy was on the podcast. But with Kurt here, he's never been on the show, so we're going to let him run down and say who is Kurt and how did he get into shooting.
So my name is Kurt McKenna, as already mentioned. But so you guys, some of you may know me as at Competition Shooting Analytics on Instagram. I haven't been very active on Instagram for a while now, but basically I'm kind of a data scientist, data analytics nerd. I've got 2 master's degrees in engineering, and I've been in shooting USPSA since 2016, and about 3-4 years ago now, I got interested in looking into the actual data, the classification system, just because I was just very curious about how high hit factor was set, how high scores on different individual stages were rolled out, and how could we look at the gamification from the data side of the classification system. So being kind of a programmer and a data scientist, I was like, hey, I'll use my skills, and I wrote some algorithms to pull data from USPSA and from Patch Score and start looking at the data, and started posting it and looking at the data from there. And that's kind of like the high level. I've also around the same time I did make GM PCC, and legitimately, not when the scores were super easy. I'm also currently a master in carry optics and a legit master. I'm about a 90% master in carry optics, and that's not just from the because I was a GM at PCC. So I actually do know how to shoot a pistol too. Fortunately now I was able to maybe draw up enough beef or conspiracy or whatever you want to call it to get some eyes onto the classification numbers and say, hey, we can drive some data and some algorithms and some math into how we can set high hit factors and possible other ways to classify to run the averages, and kind of the board got on board and said, hey, yeah, that sounds great, let's do it. And here we are today.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot to compact. First off, say you are a nerd, 2 masters, or you have no life. Is that how this works too?
They'll call me. They'll call me. I am married, so I have something of a life. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So, what are your masters? So, are they just like data science kind of stuff, or?
So I have a master's in mechanical engineering and a master's in petroleum engineering. And I also worked for an oil and gas company for about 3.5 years before grad school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I run my own data consulting company and mechanical engineering company as well.
Oh, there you go. That's kind of cool. At least you're using somewhat what you've paid. The degree that you paid so much money for. At least you're being able to use it.
Yeah. I did. I did gain a lot of skills from doing my master's, but I will also tell and advise anyone who's thinking about grad school, it's probably not worth it for your career.
Yeah.
Academia is in its own sort of existential crisis at the moment. So, yeah, let's just to put it briefly.
And the student loans.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
Yeah. The never ending seeing of I still owe them money for my education that I barely get to scratch at.
Yeah.
It's okay, kids. Go to college. At least get some education. That's at least smart. Don't be like me. Don't be like me. Anywho, so that's cool. So you're running your data and your algorithms, and I know a couple times I've heard you on a couple podcasts. You talk about the bell curve, right?
Mm-hmm.
With like the classification system, which is really cool. I know we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So did you both of you gentlemen volunteer to be on the committee, or did someone say that both of you would be good on the committee, or did you say I'll volunteer to be sacrificed?
Yeah, no. As far as I know, everyone volunteered. I wasn't planning on it. It was funny. Alex, our chairman, put up a list of what he was looking for to be on the committee, and it was basically all people that fit Kurt's description, like people that are way smarter than I am. But I guess I've been vocal enough about the classification system over the years and how it works and how I'd like to see it improved and so on and so forth. People, I guess, said expected me to be a part of the solution, and so I had like a couple board members and a bunch of other folks be like, "Hey, you should really jump in." So I threw my hat in the ring, and here we are. I'm helping out however I can.
Yeah, and I volunteered as well. I mean, they had a call for volunteers, and I know they also wanted not just like data scientists, but they also wanted level-headed, experienced shooters like Billy, like Tamfo Timmy to say like bounce ideas off because we us data scientist nerds can get very easily very up inside the math and forget about the actual practical application. And come up with some wild ideas that when you sit down and look at the actual like reality of things, it just doesn't work. And so we wanted, I know Alex is he's a very good leader, very like intelligent in that regards. He knew we needed people like Billy and Timmy on the team, and I volunteered as well for that, and I was very grateful that Alex picked me, and then the board approved me because I know. The board, some of the board members in December, at least some of the older board members before they left weren't so happy with my involvement.
Yeah, but didn't also that must a few of those board members also tell you to put your name in the hat too?
Yeah, that's true. They did tell me if you want to talk a big game, step up and volunteer, and I stepped up and volunteered my services. So, Yep.
And that's all we can do, right? This is a volunteer sport, and we're a bunch of volunteers, and we got to make it happen, right?
Yep.
So when your guys let's see, the first thing you guys pretty much came out in in January, and you pretty much asked for a couple. Well, you pretty much wanted some data, right? In January, nothing really changed. Nothing was approved to change in January. Is that correct?
Yeah. So basically, as soon as we formed, kind of the very 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 beginning, we needed access to data. So as part of like the hitfactor.info, so we have a couple guys from that team that helped develop hitfactor.info. We'd already had worked with a deal with Ken Nelson with PracticeScore. So we had already had access to data as well through practice score. But we wanted, to formalize it through USPSA. So like that very, very first beginning part was, formalizing data access and everything from USPSA, and not just like what's available on practice score, but what is like the official data that is submitted to USPSA as like the official scores that are recorded for classification. And USPSA on their end wanted to make sure that that the data was buttoned up, and like all the personal information or anything that was in there that would be considered personal information was removed, and that all we had access to was just purely scores and nothing nothing that could be considered private and so on. So like that's basically we just purely get us the data, get us the scores, so we can begin to do some analysis. That was the first step.
So with that first step, were you guys able to get like, I know they said they erased personal data, but were you able to see like X score was put up by X classification of shooter?
So the data that we have access to, we can see who shot it. So like the name of the shooter and their member info, and that's it as far as personal information goes.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you have privated your info on USPSA, like on the website, if you private your info, then the data is anonymized. So you get like a fake name and a fake member info, at least as far as we see. But we have zero access to anything like addresses, club info, credit card info, anything like that would be actual like personal info that you would, things that like doxing, so on, like that would be concerning. But we zero access to that, and basically anything that's it's even tighter security than what's available on practice score. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha. So at least you can see like, okay, this B class shooter put up a 98% run on some classifier, right? You can pretty much put that as like an outlying data point, right? So you're able to weed through. Well, I mean, you have math to weed through all the data. Remember, not math guy. I'm going to say that like a million times during this podcast, listeners, because I was not math guy. Mm-hmm. But so that's good. So you get your data, and you've been able to access the data, and you guys have churned through a lot of data pretty quickly. I'm imagining, or did you have a good track running with the guys from over at hitfactor.info with practice scores data already?
So because of hitfactor.info, we were able to kind of like hit the ground running. But we still, even since then, this wasn't like a copy paste. We still did. I mean, since the formation of the committee, I mean, I've put in well over 100 hours worth of work on the data, and I know several of the other guys as well have put even more than that on the data as well. So I mean, we've put in a lot more work than what was already done by the hitfactor.info crew, but that allowed us to kind of hit the ground running with some of the data that we'd already done. And like both like Jay Slater, he's on the classifier committee. He had done some preliminary work as well in the fall of last year. It kind of came to some of the similar conclusions that I'd come to about a year or two prior, about the bell curve and the shapes of the bell curves and so on, and how we could possibly manipulate the data to come with the hit factors that at least to develop a hit factor. And so like we weren't coming in dry, essentially. We all of us kind of, at least the math people on the team, all had some like preconception and some preliminary work we had done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that at least that gives you, you've churned through your data and been able to figure out everything that's going on with that. And you math nerds have mathed over it and drooled over it and been like, the numbers.
The numbers, Mason, what do they mean? But one of the cool things is we actually developed a tool that, like, if we were to make any change to anything, so change a high hit factor on one thing, or say change how scores are averaged together for someone's percentage or whatever. So if we make a change to anything, the tool we made can reclassify everybody, and we can see how it affects. A single change could affect anybody, or really the entire membership. So that's like one of the really powerful things that we created pretty early on, was this tool that if we manipulate one thing, we can see how it affects everything, rather than just taking stabs in the dark and hoping that it works in the future. That was something that one of our developers on the team was able to do. That's been a really powerful tool.
Right. So you essentially you've got a tool that you could essentially adjust high hit factors and then see where X shooter would then really, with whatever's on their magical record, right? You can see them okay, they swing up or down X percent, right? And it probably either and it affects them in a positive or a negative way.
Yeah.
Because especially with removing of the flags, which at initial launch of it, when the February meeting happened and they removed the flags, or whenever they let us know that it was on the agenda, I was like, well, this is gonna blow. So I have a beef because I love shooting open division. I love my open gun, and I love to go fast and to shoot my open gun. But I'm also like, this sucks. For example, the Classifier 6 chickens. There's 6 partial targets behind no shoots, and you're shooting it. And I had a relatively I wasn't pushing it any harder. It was a match pace. It was just this is part of a match, right? I'm not gonna blow my match to go hero or zero this Classifier. So I shoot it. Had decent hits, a decent time. I have a 55% on it, and then there's a CO shooter who shot it a little bit faster. They had maybe a couple less Charlies than I did, and they have a 90%. I'm like, what? This is crap. And then they're like, oh, we're gonna adjust high hit factors. I'm like, I feel better about this now, because I'm just there's so many classifiers now that have this big discrepancy between LO, CO, and open. There's these. I mean, yes, open you have to go faster, right? That is a known factor. You get major power factor, must go faster. But I was just there's no way that this 55% ish run is so close to a master level carry optics run. It just makes no sense to me. But I don't do maths.
Yeah. So Billy, looks like you're gonna say something.
Yeah, no, you're good, bro. I was just saying, there's super clear examples of that, I think, all over the place. I mean, there was a couple of the build drill ones, I think, from the 24 series that were pretty funny to me. I shot them out in California not too long ago. And there's 2 versions of essentially the exact same Classifier stage, the exact same setup. But of course, for the pistol divisions, one of them is all the strings are freestyle, and on the other, it's got some strong hand shooting in it. So obviously, for pistol divisions, the high hit factors for that one are lower. Well, for PCC, those 2 classifiers are literally identical. It is the exact same thing, because strong shoulder only is the exact same thing as freestyle, and yet on that one, the high hit factors are significantly lower than the other one where it's freestyle the whole time, even though it's the exact same thing. And so you're right. Sometimes the system as it stands, it works surprisingly well. We see a lot of good results from it, but you definitely see those cases where you're like, okay, these hit factors clearly don't make sense. And so I'm certainly excited to have an actual system that's documented and in place and consistent. Not only to improve the accuracy of the high hit factors, but just put some logic behind it and be okay, these are actually consistent. These are all set the same way. And the level of difficulty should be, much more consistent, and hopefully help, I think what has been maybe one of the primary complaints or frustrations with the system as it stands currently.
Mm-hmm. So with that, I'm assuming that the Classifier Committee has suggested high hit factors on some, and you guys have internally talked. Billy, do you go and then in your free time or when you're not teaching, do you go and validate those high hit factors on the range?
Not so much. It's really hard to do. I've done that a couple times, play around with them. But it's interesting for me because, man, shooting classifiers in a match is obviously a very different experience from shooting them in practice on the range. This is one of those things where I discourage shooters all the time. They ask me about wanting to practice classifiers before a classifier match, whatever. I'm like, that is probably a really bad idea. It's a very different experience. You don't want to go into it with some kind of preconceived notion of pace, because most shooters on the range, even if they're, B, C, A class shooters, whatever, can shoot GM runs on a lot of classifiers like somewhat consistently. But as soon as you have an idea of like, okay, here's what a GM pace feels like, and then you go try to shoot it in a match, all of a sudden it's like 2% or something. Like things go really, really bad in a hurry. And so, yeah, I mean, I can set all kinds of records and stuff in practice, but man, until you get in that situation where you're like, man, I only have one chance to run this, it's hard to tell. And it's also one of those things where, Kurt will tell you, like, really setting these things properly is not about like what is the maximum extent of human function, like what is the best possible score you can run on these things. It's more about the bulk of the data and like what do average shooters, what are they able to do on these runs? Because man, I'm, some of the classifier stages, especially, I'm kind of a specialist in some of the skills that are required, fast draws and splits and that kind of thing. But just because I'm able to shoot, 120% on it or whatever, doesn't mean the high hit factor should go up. Like that may not be, a fair representation of what average shooters are capable of, right? So, trying to set like the max possible runs on these things is not the best way. As we've seen with the 24 series, right? Using like an average of runs from the best shooters in the country made those stages insanely difficult, right? And so really what you need is a lot of data from average shooters, set those properly, probably not like the best.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, and you're right. Everyone averaging out the data would probably be an ideal situation. But we've got math to start. So is there a plan of, we're going to set these new high hit factors with math and then see how the data comes in from there as well?
Yeah. So kind of like to back things up a bit. Yeah, kind of like historically, the high hit factor is kind of like conceptually how the community and how USPSA is kind of thought of high hit factors, and the classification is kind of what Billy was saying is like what is the peak performance of human what is humanly possible on a stage, and then classifying based on that. And you end up with some really weird times, especially if you deal with extreme outliers. How can you tell dealing with cheating or bad data entry, things of that nature, or even things like the stage wasn't set up slightly incorrectly, and so there's some inaccuracies that made it slightly easier to do, so you shoot a higher score. So all those little things can contribute to just kind of like radical differences in the scores. And then when we're looking at like the old system with the current flagging system, is it kind of encourages, well, not kind of, it does encourage the hero or zero aspect, which if you're not familiar with that is basically, you show up on the classification stage, you know that a score below your current percentage is not going to count. So if you want to class up, especially with really, really high hit factors, you have to go 110%, 120% of what you're capable of. So you might be able to connect, hook up and connect and score a really high score and shoot really well. And actually, I have a really good story of this. This is how I made master for PCC. And like it was like one score away from making GM, like one stage before I made GM, is I showed up to shooting Diamond Cutter. And Diamond Cutter is there's 4 targets, and they're all like hard partials with no shoots in front of them. And so 8 shots total, and from the hip with PCC. So I go, and like in my section, I'm kind of renowned for being able to go kind of like retard fast with a PCC, where I can just go ridiculous. So anyway, so like I go, I shoot it kind of conservatively. I get like maybe a no shoot alpha on one of them, where I like split, have that perf break for the no shoot alpha, and I think like an A class run. And one of the guys on my squad, he's like, no, I want you to reshoot it. Go pay your $5, and I want you to go shoot it retard fast. Like, we know we can do it. Go shoot at retard speed. So I paid my $5, came back, just went bananas on it, shot it 2 seconds flat, all alphas, and had the high score of 20 hit factor, and it's the highest score ever for PCC, and I think the highest score ever on that stage. And I hooked up and connected. Well, back then, I can't now, but even back then, I could not deliver that score. Like, I couldn't do it a second or a third or fourth time in a row. That wasn't what I was capable of. I got lucky and I connected because I could do that, right? Like, kind of capable. So I was able to deliver 120% of what I was capable of and got lucky and connected, right? And then because of that, I got 100% on stage and was able to get my average up to get M and then GM. And that's like a perfect example of like, in our opinion on the Classifier committee, and I think even because the board agrees with us, is like, that's, we want to take that, we want to steer kind of back to where the direction of the sport is going, and look at not what is kind of like your peak, your random 120% lucky chance versus kind of, how do you win a match? It's not what you do randomly 120% 1 out of 10 stages, but what's your 80-90% that you can do 10 stages in a row, right? And that's kind of how we're tailoring the stages to go. And that also means, in order to do that, we do, like you said, Manny, we do have to lower the high hit factors to compensate, and we are doing that with the map. And then, now dialing it back to your question, when we look at the math, so we've got our proposed high hit factors pretty much across the board. They're all coming down, but we are going to pay close attention to the data, and we're going to need new data to come in to see how everyone's behavior changes with the new system, and how all the scores now line up with the new system, and everyone's behavioral changes. And then we'll review the data in 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and see, do the current high hit factors match? Do we need to bring them down? Do we need to bring them up? Does our current target for the bell curve, does it make sense with the current data set versus the old data set? Things of that nature. Yeah, and even how we want to do updating for the high hit factors is we want to have it done automatically with the math, and have it done on at least a semi-annual basis for all the stages. That's gonna depend on basically the data, and looking at the data, from that recent period of the scores that have been shot, especially since the update, and how does that change, and then things will be kind of updated as kind of the bell curve shifts left and right with the current behavior and the current membership.
Well, that's impressive. I do like the fact that you said, updating it, hopefully updating the data semi-annually, getting the fresh inputs in there, so it's not stagnant. It's not, it's been set 5 years ago, and then we tweaked it maybe up and up because it keeps going up and up for some reason, with.
Yeah.
But it's good to see that you guys you have a plan for longevity for the committee, and in multiple facets of what it's planning on doing, which is cool. For us smooth-brained people, I need the high level reason. So what's the whole idea with SDA and MRO?
So SDA stands for same day average, and MRO is the most recent override. So same day average is, so like before, if you did a reshoot, or even before recently, where you can only do one reshoot right now, but if you do multiple reshoots, or do one reshoot today, previously it would take the highest score of the two reshoots, and that would be the score you'd have. So our thought process and our line of thinking is that if you shoot the same stage more than once, you have you get an advantage. some form of an advantage by shooting it more than once. And like in my case, like my example of I shot it twice and I got a higher score the second time, and it boosted me to GM from an A score to a GM score. Is realistically, if we take an average of the scores, that's closer to my normal performance than it is to like my peak performance. So same day average is basically kind of doling that advantage you get from shooting the same stage over again. Kind of like in a normal stage, in a normal match, you don't get a paid reshoot on a stage and get the highest score from the two shoots. You only get a reshoot on a stage if for some technical reason that you have to get a reshoot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the logic behind it, as well as like so also with the same day average is like, say if you shoot 2 matches in the same day and both clubs run the same stage, those will average together as well. So that way, you'll get affected that way.
That's some poor communication though. If 2 clubs run the same classifier on the same weekend, like it's like when I set up classifiers, or if I have to set up a classifier, I'm like I look at other people who like shoot around. And I'm like, all right, do you shoot this classifier anytime soon? Because it makes no sense to like. I guess when it made sense when the 2024 series came out, like everyone was shooting them to get data on them, right? Like, okay, and they're free. They're not really charging the club anything for them, but it's like, do you really want to keep reshooting the Tim Herron short course like every classifier match or every match?
Yeah,
it seemed like that.
Right.
It was like that, yes. It was like that for a while.
Sorry, Tim. We love you, but I think I haven't told him this yet, but I've told a bunch of shooters there needs to be the Tim Herron short course and then the Nils Jonassen short course where you back it up like 15 yards because he's so much taller,
and the targets are taller too.
Well, yeah. That'd been better. That should have been it. The targets on the Tim Herron short course should have been only as tall as Tim.
Yes. 4 foot at the shoulder versus 5 foot at the shoulder.
Yes. Sorry, we're gonna change the stage now. Figure out make a new classifier for that, would you? Oh, but yeah.
The NJS stage.
Yeah.
So then the most recent override, the MRO. So before with duplicates, so the D flag, basically if you had duplicates, if you had shot the same stage within the most recent 8, it would count your highest score. So whatever your highest score was, that's what would count. So now what we're doing is we're counting your recent score, most recent score, and that's again kind of reflects your current performance, your most recent score. And the whole purpose of that is again with both of these changes is to kind of discourage some of the gaming involved with reshooting and say clubs shooting the same stages because shooters want to get higher scores. So that's some of the logic there.
Okay,
we want your realistic performance when you show up to shoot.
Right. So most recent override would be like within your last 6 or 8, whatever we know.
Yeah.
So it could be my first score and my 8th score. Then they're going to turn into an average, essentially. Correct?
No. So most recent override, it's as long as they're not on the same day, not shot on the same day. It's going to be like the oldest ones will be just ignored, and it's going to be the current one will count. Like the most recent one will count. Is what I mean. Yeah.
So same day average will do they'll average them essentially if they're on the same day.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think this is good. I like I said, I was very against it when I'm like, oh, they're I'm going to get hosed for a while, right? And then I realized, okay, we're changing high hit factors. I might have a chance for a while to actually perform at my classification in classifiers. But this is good. I think these are all good things after I had time to digest all of this information, especially when you went on a Instagram story rampage a couple weeks ago and you're just like, I must share the internet's information. So, but do you think that with most recent override and same day average that the occurrence of classifier matches will disappear? or they will significantly shrink?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's up to the individual clubs and classifiers, or individual clubs and like people asking for classifiers. Like personally, I don't think so. Like I know clubs around in my section, you know, don't really care, and people, new shooters, especially newer shooters, want to be classified regardless, and newer shooters like the changes. Let's put it that way. So, they don't like the gamification of the classification. So younger, newer shooters like the more realistic classification, and newer shooters are the ones demanding classifier stages. So if match directors are refusing to put on classifiers or classifier matches, because things are different, even though their market base wants them, relatively newer shooters want classifications, that's something that they need to, reconsider. But it's up to the clubs ultimately.
Right. I think with the new averaging of data, right, like that, how that'll come into play since it's all on one day. I'm wondering if you'll see less attendance of shooters at those types of matches, because yeah, you're right. The new shooters want to be classified. That's probably the easiest way to get classified, unless you have to go to, if say you only go to your club, right? You go to their monthly match, you got to wait 4 months to get classified if they run 4 classifiers in a row, because you're not required to run 4 classifiers in a row. You just have to run 4 classifiers out of whatever your 7 matches for affiliation is.
So to clarify about the same day average, that only applies for the same stage.
Mm-hmm. So, like if you're going to reshoot it on, like you shot it on the same day and you reshoot it, correct?
Yeah. So like for a classifier match, like if they shot 4 different classifiers, that like those aren't averaged together. Those count as 4 separate classifiers.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think the vibe of it will change a little bit, like depending on why you're going there. Like you're saying, man. I mean, right now I think a lot of people probably approach classifier matches like just a prime opportunity to go full, hero or zero mode, and like, hey, we're gonna go shoot these 6 stages, and maybe I'll get 2 of them to count because I'm just gonna like full send it, and it'll be a chance to bump up, right? So you won't be able to approach classifier matches in that way anymore. It certainly will be an opportunity to shoot more classifier stages and try to move up, just based if you actually have gotten better and you deserve to move up. Also, we see a lot of classifier matches around here leading up to majors and stuff for people that want to classify in another division, whatever the case is, and don't want to have to shoot that division for 6 months or whatever to get their new class. And they can just do it in one day. So I don't think it'll eliminate them entirely. I think there's still some utility there, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree on that one. But Billy, you live in an area of the world, or the area of the United States, Area 6, where you have more people than you have matches, and they fill up in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, we literally my matches closest to me pretty much broke practice score this weekend because it sold out in literally 60 seconds. Not only did it sell out, but because so many people were signing up at the same time, it let in like 30 extra shooters that weren't supposed to be approved for the match. So we had to like hit up our board and be like, hey, can we add an extra stage for this week so we can add another squad to try to avoid kicking people out. So matches are no joke in this area of the country for sure. They fill up in a hurry.
Was that Rowan or was that a different club?
Yeah, Rowan. Yep.
Yeah, I've been telling Ike, like, you either need to shoot a second day or beg for more bays, because you're losing money on. Well, you're not losing money. You're letting money walk away if you don't let people shoot.
For sure. Yeah, it's tough. Again, being down in this area of the country, sort of the Bible Belt and stuff, doing matches on Sunday can be challenging. But yeah, it'd be great. We would love to do like maybe more than one a month there at the club, so forth. I think the sport is growing to a point as well. Like traditionally, people have really avoided, within a few hours of each other having more than one club match on the same weekend because they don't want to compete with each other. But I think we're getting to the point where that's going to have to change. Like we're going to have to start having, some competition there, like multiple matches that are all going on, in the same general area, just to give shooters more opportunity to shoot matches. That's certainly in our area. That's what's going to be required at this point to grow the sport is having more matches available. So we need more clubs and more folks willing to volunteer and help work matches and all that sort of thing. So going through some growing pains for sure, but I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, and Rowan, for example, it's always a good match, and yeah, there's never enough space in there. But I was
100%.
talking to Ike about it, and he's like, yeah, even if you put it up on the calendar, people would still like, even if you closed all the competition bays down for a match, right? People still wouldn't pay attention to their emails and still try to show up and shoot their plinking 22s in the one bay for 10 minutes, and it's like, yeah, it's frustrating. But yes, I agree. There needs to be more matches around in the area. Like, I'm starting up a club. I'm closest, like the next club's like 2 hours away from me, which is fine. That's on the same day, but it's just how the schedule works out. What works for the range, what works for the person running the match, and the relative distance, right? So, which I'm good to see is like, I'm not necessarily taking away other shooters from their match. I'm finding new shooters from another location that are coming to the match. So that's always a bonus. So it's giving people more of an opportunity to shoot when they want. So, but here we go. This is the next thing I want to talk about. So I think you guys put this out. Yeah, this came out. The interim classifier update and recommendations is a list of classifiers that you guys put out specifically for L10. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that interim list is kind of like the list of stages that we want at like clubs to focus on for L10 data collection. And you'll see a list similar to that in our March board meeting proposal. That'll have to do with perhaps reducing the number of stages, but kind of ideally, where we're going to look at optimizing the number of stages around the short course, the long, want more movement, longer stages, the stand and blast, the movement stages, all that stuff. And so that interim was basically like, hey, L10 is a kind of like we have a temporary hold on that, so we're not giving out classifications because of the optics change where optics are now allowed in L10. We want to collect more data for L10, and so because of that, we want clubs to focus on running these stages. ASAP. If you can run those stages, that would be awesome. So to help us with data collection, and also L10. Despite what the rules committee was thinking, L10 is a currently kind of a fun meme division. So when you're interested in doing something fun, shoot an L10.
Yeah, everyone can shoot their 40 tac sports with a dot on them and be like, let's rip. Like, that's probably like the meta game. That's the meta gun probably for L10 right now. Frame mounted 40 checkmate or 40 tac sport.
Yeah, probably. Or like 40 2011s that people aren't shooting limited anymore, but want to put a dot on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Kurt, when you put this out, I think this was end of January, about 2408, right? About, is this actually feasible to set up? And I'll probably agree. This is not feasible to set up as a classifier. Like, everything could go wrong on this.
Yeah, so we were having some internal debate in the classifier committee about 2408, and that was kind of like one of the questions: is this too complicated to set up for most clubs? Like, we've shot the heck out of it already last year. Going forward, will clubs still want to shoot it and set it up and shoot it? Is an important question. Is it too complicated? Does it use too many props and walls to use for a classifier? All kind of like pertinent questions for match directors and people that actually set up stages. Because it is actually, practically speaking, it is actually a good field course stage that does actually produce some good data for classification. But from like a pragmatic match director standpoint, like my club, we haven't set it up or used it because it's just too big, takes too long, uses too many walls. And so kind of wanted to know what's the general feel for that. So yeah.
I don't think you're wrong though. I mean, like 8 walls for an X amount of targets that you've got to make sure. Luckily, there's all right angles other than a couple targets that are some, acute angles off of those. But I don't know, like when everyone was complaining that Christian Seiler shot it and didn't even shoot GM on it. So it's like, but who's going to shoot it at nationals? Who's going to shoot a GM classifier score on it at nationals though, right?
Well, and the high hit factors were way off for it for sure. Regardless of the quality of the stage, what I'm kind of hoping happens, and this would be cool, right? I mean, right now I think matches across the country, they have their 6 bays or whatever they're running for the local match, and the smallest, most cramped bay is just reserved for the classifier, and we're used to putting up a 1-box stage and doing it there. I think maybe eventually I'd love to see that mindset change where like, hey, if we have a classifier stage like 2408 or like some of the other stage style classifiers we might be introducing at some point, hey, there's no reason that the classifier stage can't be one of your best stages of the match. Like if it's a really good stage, you set up in a real bay and set up whatever short course you want to in your little cramped bay. That's fine. That doesn't have to be where the classifier goes. And so, without using any more props for the match, as long as you aren't adding another field course, you're just using it as one of your field courses for the match. It can be really cool. Obviously, it takes more time to set up because you have to measure everything. And I'm not expecting that, every, as a match director, you're going to use a field course like that in every match of the year. But having some of those, I think shooters definitely seem to appreciate. I mean, obviously, shooters, all the feedback I get is that shooters really prefer those kind of stages as classifiers over the traditional, hey, we're going to do 3 strings and one of them is going to be freestyle and one of them strong hand, one of them's weak hand, and it's all Virginia count with all these partials. Shooters definitely seem to prefer a 2408 style stage over that for sure. So having some of those in the catalog, I think is probably worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. And one of the questions we wanted to answer was like, if you have setup inaccuracies, like how will that mess up the data if it does? Because like there are certain classifiers where if you don't set it up perfectly correct, it like massively changes target presentations and stuff like that. A perfect example was one of the 22 classifiers that was one of the proposed ones that didn't get accepted. It was kind of like an X shape walls around, like it was like a box stage, like a shooting area with like X-shaped walls around, and you had to go to each corner of the wall and like each corner of the shooting area and shoot around the walls. And the thing was, like, if the wall wasn't at the exact angle and at exactly 8 foot long, then it like drastically changed what you could and couldn't see of the target. And that was like a perfect example of like, if you didn't set it up perfectly right and have like the perfectly sized props, then it like massively changed the stage. So like one of the questions we wanted to answer with 2408 was like, is that the case with that stage? And one thing we actually did is we set it up in Practice Him, and which is actually really good stage designing software. And we messed around with like, all right, if you like move this wall off by like 20 degrees and move that wall off by this far, like, does it, how much does it like really kind of affect how you can see the targets, even by changing it by like ridiculous, changing walls and shooting areas and target positions by like ridiculous amounts. And we kind of were pretty comfortable with how it's currently designed with this, if the setup isn't accurate, that it shouldn't affect the data that much. So we're like, all right, well, people really like the stage, and me as a match director, I might not want to set it up, but people like it, so we'll keep it.
Right. Yeah. And I guess it's kind of with the customer base, but it's also how many people do you have to help set up? How many people are there to, tear it down? Usually the squad that ends on the largest field course has like 20 extra walls than everybody else does. And they're like, maybe we should not plan to end on the big bay, but they want to be warmed up for the big bay. So they perform really well on it. So it's like, well, I guess you get to tear it down then.
Yeah. And my like personal stage design philosophy is like, if you can use as little props as possible, as few props as possible, and accomplish the same design philosophies, then like good. That's a good thing. But like, if you're just like throwing out walls and barrels just because you don't know what you're doing and you just want to throw out walls and barrels, then like you need to rethink what you're doing, right?
Oh, 100%. I agree. Yes. Yeah, that's
and I know
ideal.
like some of the classifier stages are kind of guilty of that. It's like you could redo this classifier stage, and I think 2001 might be a perfect example of that, or 2201 might be a perfect. I know righty tighty is a perfect example of that, which is 2201. It's like you can make it a 3-box stage and accomplish the same thing and that thing uses, I think, 5 walls. And so you could do it with 3 boxes and no walls and do the exact same thing with a stage. And it's like, just do that, right?
I mean, even we talked earlier a minute ago about Tim here in short course. I mean, that one has that wall in the back that does literally nothing.
It literally does nothing.
Yeah.
No, here's even better. We put a banner of Tim up on the back wall, and that must be in everyone's stage, and then it's just Tim waving at you.
No, it's a "you must be this tall" sign.
Yes. Where's Bill Duda when you need him to make something like that, right?
Yeah.
But I want to touch a little bit about something that Billy said when he was, about how they use the most cramp bay on the smallest stage for a 3-string standard stage, right? You are, as a professional firearms instructor, Virginia. You'd probably agree. I don't know. I'll take your opinions on this. Virginia is not practical anymore in our sport. Would you feel that nowadays the shooters who are coming up, Virginia count is like a detriment almost to their progression, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I would certainly prefer to see the vast majority of stages that I shoot not be Virginia count. I think that it's an interesting challenge for sure, and you do actually see it as an unforced strategy sometimes on stages, right? I've definitely gone to stages where I'm like, okay, man, if I want to have a good score on this stage, I can't reload. And this is a 24-round stage, and I have 24 rounds in the gun. So you're going to shoot it, even though it's not a Virginia count stage, you're going to shoot it with a Virginia count strategy, right? Like, I cannot shoot makeups on this stage. So I'm definitely not in the camp of like, hey, we need to eliminate Virginia count all the time from everything. Where it does get frustrating for me is like when we have extremely high-risk stages that are all hardcover, all no-shoots, and it's strong hand weekend, and it's at distance, and it's Virginia count. It's like, okay, what are we doing at this point? Especially with, again, some of the old hit factors that encourage like the hero zero mode shooting, right? Because now it's like, okay, if I had this stage at nationals, and it was Virginia count, and it had all this hardcover, I would just be shooting this very carefully to like absolutely ensure I do not have a mic on this stage. But as a part of the classifier system, like you can't shoot it that way. Kind of in the current iteration. So it forces you to do things that are not representative of how you would obviously shoot in a match. And so those are some of the things I think we're trying to shift for sure, both in sort of the catalog of stages, hopefully, as those get updated, as well as obviously the kind of the new mode, hopefully that folks are able to shoot the system in with it aiming to judge consistency better and the more realistic hit factors to kind of reflect that.
Right. Now here's me spitballing because I'm just thinking, right, how would we feel, or I would wonder what the data would kind of show if we were able to turn some of the old Virginia style hit classifiers into fixed time. I mean, I would be curious, right? Because, like everyone who starts like training or in practical shooting or whatever, they've got these part times for these drills, right? Like the Bill drill, try to be sub 2 seconds, right? Or the El Pres, probably the same, not El Pres, but the Blake drill, right? You'd roughly want it to be under 2 seconds. I'm wondering what the data would kind of look like, or what the classification data would look like if we turned those classifier style stages that are Virginia count into fixed time stages. I wonder what the actual time should be. I wonder, math man, is this feasible?
So as far as math goes, fixed time stages actually have their own subset of problems, and the reason being is we have a sport where we have PCC, we have rifles with infinitely large-sized magazines, combined with a division that has 6-round revolvers, right? And so unless we can do multiple part times for each division, it just produces garbage data. And the thing is we can't do multiple part times for very practical match reasons, right? Like try getting your average stage RO is at a level 1 match to be able to switch between par times on a timer. You can't.
For every shooter.
For every shooter, you can't. Especially if it's multiple, more than just two, right? Like it's not
Right.
possible. So like in our sport with having revolvers and PCC, having fixed time is just impractical, and you end up with like ridiculous scores.
Right.
And unless the only option here is unless the available points that you could possibly score is ridiculously high, right? That no one can achieve it, even PCC. And at that point, then you can kind of do fixed time. But that kind of like defeats your whole idea of like, say, like a Blake drill, right? Well, if you were to do a Blake drill with a fixed time of say 2 seconds, well, to make it reasonable for the data, you'd have to put up say like 6 targets. For a PCC can shoot 6 targets in 2 seconds easily, right? So maybe you might need more than that. And so then like that kind of like gets into the absurd territory. Whereas like Comstock or Virginia count, like we can accomplish 3 targets with Virginia count or with Comstock, no problem. And we, with hit factor, with the whole concept of hit factor, we can do what we set out to do without having to do all these crazy weird things with par times and points available and all sorts of stuff. So like hit factor does that for us. Right. So like fixed time sounds fun in concept, and like we can come up with some really cool stages and do some fun things, but it like just kind of like that throwing out extra walls and the barrels is like, but we can still accomplish the same thing with way less headache with just doing Comstock with hit factor, or Virginia count and hit factor. Right. Like, and data wise, like almost every fixed time stage, a realistic high hit factor for PCC is higher than the points available. So if we were to have realistic high hit factors, you couldn't make GM with PCC on several of the fixed time stages. Like the highest you could score would be an M score. But we're not going to do that. Like that's kind of absurd, right? Like to basically force people to go to M because there's not enough points available.
Yep. Yeah, and to your point on Virginia count too, man. I mean, I think like fixed time. If we want to talk about unpractical challenges that have no basis in reality, like I get your point on the build drill, right? But by the same token, I mean, 10 years ago, people thought like a 3-second build drill was a standard, and nowadays it's like, man, if you shoot a 2-second build drill, everybody's like, okay. I'm glad you know how to shoot properly. That's cool, and so it's like, hey, setting those par times, like, man, obviously it not only changes with equipment, but it changes over time as skill levels change and that kind of thing. It doesn't really keep up, and it forces you to shift your focus away from, basically collecting the points as fast as you can, which is what we do in the sport, balancing speed and accuracy, and shifts it towards this. Okay, here's the amount of time that I have that I somehow know ahead of time. What am I able to do with that time? What can I accomplish? And it shifts you to some kind of preconceived idea of pace, which again is like the whole thing we're trying to kind of avoid. So, personally, not really a fan of the fixed time thing at all.
Right. And like personally too, like even in terms of like pure practicality, Virginia count, in my opinion, isn't something that's practical. Like in a real like self-defense scenario, what's practical is like how many bullets you have in your magazine, right? Like that's what's practical. And then how many bullets does the jury think is too many bullets? Like that's what's practical. Like it's not like, oh, you're only allowed to shoot 2 at this target and then it's penalties. It's you shoot 2 until you get 2 alpha. You shoot enough till you get 2, till the threat's neutralized, like, right? Like, obviously we're not IEPA, we're not 3-gun, we're not whatever, but it's we're still a sport, but it's, we do want to actually think about the practicality of what we're doing and not just coming up with trick shooting for the sake of trick shooting.
Oh, 100%. I love the fact that we're trying to become more practical. I was just kind of spitballing on the tip of my tongue. I'm like, where can I go? But
that's a good idea.
I don't know if it was an idea. I don't know if I'd call it good. Don't make me. You don't have to make me feel good. My wife doesn't let me feel that way anytime, so it's all good. But so I'm assuming from that little conversation bit that you're looking to eliminate or reduce the number of fixed time classifiers to pretty much like this, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that because I agree.
It's
Like,
pretty fair.
it's like, yeah,
That's
you
fair to say.
like because I think there was a list at some point of like the easiest classifiers to make your classification on like list, right? I mean, I'm assuming everyone has seen this list, right? And like lightning and thunder is probably the number one classifier on that list, right?
Mhm.
It's like, especially for PCC.
No, yeah, especially for PCC. Yeah. No.
Well, I mean, really, for a lot of the optics divisions, I mean, on those older fixed time classifiers, especially were set before those divisions tended to exist. It's like, okay, they're super, super easy now. To Kurt's point.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's good. I think that's not a bad idea, right? Like, not every, and you have to train people to run fixed time. Like, it's not like hold box next to head, let them finish stage. Make sure you have accurate time. No, it's hold box next to ear. Hopefully, you stay with them so they can hear the beep, right? Like, I don't know. You know, Billy, I know you're using Autos, right? You're still using their products for your hearing protection, or did you switch to something fancier now?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah, mostly on the Harrison Sons these days, but autos are still good.
But you still have good hearing protection that probably blocks out sound when you're you're shooting. So who says you hear that second beep, right? And that's a lot. I hear a lot of people complain about. I didn't hear the beep, especially indoors. Never run fixed time indoors if you want people to hear the beep because it's too loud.
Yeah, and forget. I mean, at a certain point, forget the shooter. I mean, it becomes a thing of the RO making sure they keep track of how many rounds we're after and so forth. When you have a PCC and it may not be picking up, every shot. And yeah, there's all sorts of challenges with fixed time that we just don't really need to be going through.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I mean, I don't mind like a fixed time stage like in a major match. I don't know if I knew Kurt, you probably didn't, but Billy, did you shoot 2024 Area 5?
Oh no.
Okay. But they had like a moving fixed time stage, right? Where you had to go essentially to three ports and you had to shoot spinning targets, right? So the targets appear and then they disappear, right? I think that's really cool in an aspect of when you have a range that can do it, but it's definitely a challenge when you just, I have to worry about going 0.31 over whatever the time is if it's a normal standard stage.
Yeah, that sounds like it was exactly like the one that was at Handgun Nationals that year. I'm not sure if it was an exact copy and paste. You're talking about Cardinal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen those kind of stages they do there. For sure, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, and the one they did at Area 5 at least last year, you at least moved, so it wasn't just like you going up to boxes. So there was a little bit of strategy involved for some people. It's like, do you start in the middle and shoot there, move over, or do you eat up a bunch of time? Luckily, this year they're gonna maybe have a fixed time stage in there again, but they fixed the box so they can do different variable. Because the problem was it was like 4 or 8 seconds at first, and then next year was 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It could go up by twos, so you got to fit a stage in to make it make sense. Now I think they can have any number of what they can set it at any half second now, so that's kind of nice for. I would prefer the old put it at where if you go over the full second, it's it's gone, it's disappeared, you don't have to worry about it. But that's just me. But I like all the things we've been talking about here with you guys' proposed changes. I haven't made Kurt go crazy math, drooling over formulas tonight, so that's always a good sign. I think that what you guys are doing as a committee so far, from what I'm getting through our conversation, is very good things, good changes for our sport, right? You're allowing people to not be demoralized by, I shot this 1999 classifier and I got a XYZ percent. It's like, oh, I shot this classifier and I actually perform where I perform at matches at, right? I think that's kind of the goal of revitalizing the classification system that you guys are trying to do, which is a good thing. I think we need to bring modernization into those things, right? So I'm assuming everyone isn't everyone also trying to bring in new designs for classifiers as well, or is that to the DEI committee, the group?
Some of both for sure. Yeah, we've got quite a few new designs that I'm really excited about. Frankly, way more than we're probably ever going to use. But we have some folks from outside that are submitted some great stages as well, and so after we get through some of these big first rounds of changes, I think we'll definitely be looking at hopefully getting some new ones added in to change the flavor up a little bit and make sure that we have a really good balance. We have a good idea of, hey, we need, like Kurt was saying, that we want to have some short courses, some medium courses, so on. We also want to make sure we have well-balanced tests of various skills that are used in the sport and have a good number of stages that can be used in indoor ranges. And we have a bunch of things that we're trying to accomplish with kind of the catalog of stages. And so hopefully we'll be bringing some good, fresh stages into that catalog to help kind of improve the selection a good bit.
I would agree. That all sounds good. Now, I know that there's a plan to make a list of only 50 or 60 classifiers after your next recommendation. Is that where we're roughly sitting at for number wise?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
So my second question is as new stages come in, will they rotate out, right? So are we going to say there's only going to, I'll talk in hypotheticals. Say we want to have 50 classifiers total, right? Only 50 classifiers. Say we add 5. Does that mean we're booting the bottom 5 from the original 50? Or is that not in thoughts of the committee yet?
So, I mean, we've discussed that, and we kind of like that idea, but there's nothing set in stone at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Just put it that way. And it comes down to like the board and what the board wants. We can make the proposal to say axe half the stages, but if they're like, nah, we like XYZ, then it won't happen. But
do you maybe want to speak to why it's important to not have too many though?
Yeah. So one of the reasons, as far as one of the reasons about why we actually want to reduce the stages, right? It's not just because hey, we don't like 99s or, we don't like something that someone made at some point, right? There is actually a real technical reason why we want to reduce the stages, and that's actually because of the data and because of the data collection. Because we're moving towards a statistical method for setting high hit factors, that means we need a certain amount of scores per division per stage, right? And currently we have 100 stages and 8 divisions, so that basically means we have 800 separate stages worth of score sets that we need, or separate score sets that we have to maintain and add data to. And really we need a minimum of 150-ish or so scores per stage per division to kind of get a relevant high hit factor. Kind of in that ballpark is about 150. And so something like carry optics, which we all think of carry optics, limited optics, getting 100 scores, you can have that banged out in a match or two, no big deal. But when we have revolver, limited 10, and even some of the more classic iron sight divisions like production and limited nowadays, if we were to add a new stage, if we were to add say 5 new stages, getting 150 scores for limited might even be a challenge, right? Get 150 scores per stage for limited might actually be a challenge, let alone 150 scores for L10 or revolver. So a big part of the reason for the reduction of stages is just having a focused amount of stages, so that all the clubs are shooting the mixture of the existing stages, and we're not just chasing say the new stages or shooting can you count 500 times or whatever, right?
The answer is no, I cannot count.
Yeah, you're right. I can't count. But yeah,
I really hope you can count. we need your
5.
math to be right.
Count to 5. Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the main motivators is we want to reduce the total number of stages so that it's easier to collect data for the existing stages we have, especially again in the case of L10 and in production. If you have a major division change like production going to 15, L10 adding optics, you need to start collecting all the data for all the stages again to re-update the high hit factors. And if we have 100 stages for a division that doesn't have very much participation, like that'll take forever. But if we, reduce it to say like 50, that'll take half as long. So that's
I think L10
motivations.
Yeah, L10's really a great example. I mean, obviously, I think really those changes kind of went into effect like a matter of weeks after our first meeting as a committee. So we kind of had to get a plan together for that in a hurry, and we probably need to refine that a little bit. But I mean, traditionally, when we either have a new division or the division has changed super drastically, like L10, to where all of our data is no longer valid at all. We've kind of guessed, I think, at high hit factors, right? Either by averaging other divisions or just kind of doing some back of the napkin math, like, well, a GM can draw this fast, like that kind of thing. And we kind of see the results, right? I mean, I think Carry Optics and PCC probably being good examples of, data sets that were with hit factors were definitely too easy at launch and created like a bunch of free GMs and so forth. And so we obviously don't want to do that moving forward. We want to have, really accurately set high hit factors so that everything's accurate. But like, well, L10 right now, we need fresh data for all of the classifiers in the book, which, like Kurt's saying, in a really low participation division is going to take a minute for sure. So having less stages will let us get L10, as an example, back out of that provisional status way faster, hopefully.
Well, it's funny enough. I have a group of friends who live in Chicago, and they're like, we're shooting L10 through the winter. It's like, they're like, we want to make data. Well, I think they just want to have fun with it too. I mean, why not, right?
We love you guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I mean, I'm putting together a 1911 right now with an optic on it for L10 just for fun,
Yeah, I mean, why not, right?
Yeah.
For the lulls.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Kurt.
But yeah, no. As far as like adding new stages, so that is definitely one thing we've discussed. Is like, if we add new stages, kind of subtracting out, retiring the same amount of stages. That way we're not like getting back into the same problem we've had in the past year of adding too many stages. But yeah, that's kind of like a future problem, a future us problem. But that's something that, we've discussed.
Mm-hmm. I think the one that was first on my list that needs to be retired is Quickie Mart. Or the one you actually have to have the table that's actually to a dimension, like with the cash drawer, the one that essentially you pull out. I think you load your gun and then you shoot them and then you reload the gun from the drawer. That one's it's a prop that no one has, or who wants to hold on to the prop that you can only use for one class. I mean, I guess you could use it as a table, but you know what I mean. It's silly. Burn that one to the ground.
Yeah. There's several like that require construction of like super specific props just for that one stage that you're probably not going to run more than once a year, and I think we'd agree that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So definitely taking a look at those for sure.
Mm-hmm. And logic like that is kind of going into some of our like retirement recommendations is like, super unique props that you don't use for anything else other than classifiers, things like that, and not, other than just data. Kind of goes into the that decision making process, that decision tree, kind of that match director of like, we don't run the stage for XYZ reason.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, do I really want to spend all this time setting this one up? No, not really. We're not going to set it up.
And kind of in that note too, there's a lot of the stages. There's a lot of like, not miscommunications, but like kind of question marks about in the WSBs. And so one thing we're planning on doing is potentially republishing all of the written stage briefs, and so that like everything has a uniform stage diagram, uniform language. Everything's clarified so that there's no like question mark of like, what is a standard height table? Like, what does that actually mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or like, what is a card table? Right. So there's like eliminate the questions like that. That's something we are planning on working on, and hopefully we'll have that soon.
Oh yeah, like there was a classifier set up at our last indoor match of the season. It was 99.56, I want to think. Where essentially you stand in a box, you shoot a full size USPSA you shoot a USPSA paper, a full size popper. Transition across the whole stage, shoot another full-size popper and another USPSA paper. You then run up to this wall that's got a port that you got to shoot through that's only 30 inches off the ground.
and then shoot 3 paper through the port. The diagram is absolute garbage. Like everything's super squished together for the diagram, and then you've got like this long, like it doesn't even account for like the distance. It's like bizarre. I'm just like, and then when I look at it, I'm like
the PowerPoint diagram. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I was setting it up, and I'm arguing with the guy who gave me the diagram. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Your port should be up here, like. And then it's like, no, you got to think all the way 30 from the ground. I'm like, oh, I guess that makes sense. Well, really, we were shooting it indoors. It'd been nice if the actual wall went all the way to the ground, so then the port was where it's supposed to be instead of having the open wall underneath. Because there was people who slid through. And they're like, ooh. Well, I give this guy super props. Like he slid through most of the way, and he kept his gun in the proper direction. He scooted his ass back, and he got and shot through the port. And he was a newer shooter. He was a newer shooter to the matches. He's a law enforcement officer, so we were all like, "Heck yeah, good job! You stayed safe, and you had fun, and you have to finish the match, right?" And which is super cool up here. Like we'll get about 10 to 15 LE who show up to a match, depending on how close they are to like Detroit, which is awesome to see. So they're getting out there and getting some training, and they're getting better at shooting, and not just being another bad statistic.
Yeah, definitely.
But
and another one that I like, a classic one that I love / hate is ones where like it'll reference the no shoot height on laying on top of a target, and it'll say like line it up with like the lettering, like bottom of the A, C, or whatever on the target. And the thing is the letters have changed where they are on the target over time. So like previously, the whoever was manufacturing the targets, the letters were up higher or they were down lower, one of the two. And a few years ago they made the change to their die stamps and changed the position of the letters. But well,
it's still different to this day depending on what manufacturer you go from. I can get both of them. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get a XYZ target, you can get an X target, a Y target, and a Z target. They might have the same outline, but their numbers are all different. Their letters are all different on there.
Yeah. Yep. And it's silly that's been in the WSB forever and not been changed. So, that type of stuff we're going to go in and standardize so it doesn't have that sort of stupidity.
Yeah, with some nice practice sim. I'm still learning how to use that. I've been a big SketchUp guy forever. And I'm just like, I gotta learn the new times with these young kids who are sending me stages. I'm like, because that's the worst thing is like I have a buddy who I help him with his club as well, and he will get practice sim stages and then rebuild them in SketchUp. So he has them all, and it's just like, okay, that's too much effort to figure that out. I'll just download your file from practice sim and call it a day. Mm-hmm. And then it's nice that there's a WSB builder in there too. Mm-hmm. So you take out some of the legwork so you don't have to remember some words. And
yeah,
it is interesting now with sometimes you'll need the new make ready position instead of your make ready position might be different than your start position, for example, like those silly places that have no see-through walls, and you can't see a target anywhere. But yeah.
That's an interesting little change.
Practice Sim's great. We've been using it quite a bit. Some of the updates you may have seen on it lately have sort of been actually at our request specifically. Things we've kind of asked for to help us with working on some different designs and so forth. So it's a great program. Folks should definitely check out.
Yeah, and the developer, he's really good at taking feedback in and incorporating it. Yeah.
Well, really quickly too. Like I remember there was an update. Some guy from my club was like, "Hey, can we get yard increments on the ground now?" And he's like, it was like 2 days later, and it was done for him. So I was like, "That's pretty cool."
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if people really measure in feet anymore. Like when I don't know. All my SketchUp diagrams had yard increments on the ground. Like I don't want to count feet. I just like okay. And this is everyone starts generally in a yard, right? Roughly that 3 feet mark. It's like I don't want to count. I don't want to count box. I don't want to count mini lines inside big boxes. No. Remember, smooth brain.
Yeah.
There you go. You guys need a T-shirt. One half is smooth brain. One half is like really massive and ridged. And then you have like little stickers that say Billy and Timmy, rest of committee. But that's just funny. I can keep going on and on about those jokes. I have one more question before I think we can wrap this one up. But this is probably long down the road. You can tell me that you're nowhere near there either. Is the committee considering anything about a form, like a better process for someone to request to move down? Right, we've got some legacy masters who know they can't perform at master class level. Right? Is there? I know there's a process currently. You can petition the board. Is the committee looking or even thought about a mathematical sense for them to be able to move down?
Yeah, so the board has actually requested that we look into this specifically for like making it kind of mathematically driven and not just like hand evaluation. We haven't done a lot of work at the moment, but yes, that's on kind of like our docket, our to-do list here in the future.
Well, that's good. I think that needs to be math based. I mean,
yeah,
I've shot with a lot of people, and they're like, "Oh man, I can't shoot. I'm this class, but I always perform at X class percentage at a major match." I'm like, "Well, you are getting up there in years, so it's always like
yeah."
And they don't shoot well because they typically shoot on staff day. So then there's not always the best plans. I don't like to use staff days as an excuse, even though I'm a broadcast and I have to work matches to go shoot majors. I think I performed fairly well on staff day, but yeah, I don't use that as a crutch. But yeah, I think some of those guys, I don't know where it came up. I don't know. It may have been one of your stories, right? The historical or legacy classification, and then like your actual classification, right? I don't know if I might be putting words in your mouth, Kurt, but or paraphrasing something at some point.
Yeah, those are some ideas some people have had. It's just things like, you were, say, a GM in 2018 or something, but those are just, we're not necessarily considering that at the moment, but those are just ideas out there.
Even better. We remember Halo, not Halo, but Modern Warfare Prestige class, right? Go back to the beginning.
go Prestige.
Go Prestige.
So, that's hilarious. That would be fun.
Now that you have the ability to get 0% average, people have talked about the speed running to GM back down to 0% back to GM, and kind of like doing that as a challenge. So there you go. That's a new challenge. That would be your Prestige.
So we do that, and then you tell Rick to program the little coin on their classification system badge, and then be like Prestige.
Prestige 1 GM.
Yeah.
I actually love that. That would be so cool.
Right?
Yeah. That's a good idea.
See, video games that I don't play anymore, but I still remember about those. I'm like, yeah, Prestige class. Yeah, there we go. Guys, did you have anything else? I know we've talked about a lot of topics here and a lot of different avenues and rabbit holes. Is there anything that we missed that you guys want to make sure we share to get out to the public?
I think we've hit the high notes, man. I mean, for me, the goal of all this is like, man, if you shoot at an A class level at matches moving forward, you should just be able to shoot your classifier stage like you would any other stage of the match and just make A class. Like that's just how it should work. Instead of being, like a whole special different thing that you have to like really stress out about and shoot in a different way. It should hopefully just be a better representation of actual match performance, or at least correlate to that better. And just be a really good tool for people to, kind of track progression and set goals and get kind of assessed at a national level while shooting at a local level. And just a tool to help people get better at shooting is what we're kind of trying to work towards. So I'm super optimistic. I mean, no system's ever perfect, or let alone perfect right out of the gate. But I'm super optimistic that we're going to see a real improvement in how this thing works in very very short order. So I'm excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. What Billy said is kind of our intent, and we're hoping people get out of it. And I know, like I'm looking forward to kind of taking classification seriously again myself. Because since I haven't made GM, I haven't just haven't taken it seriously, haven't cared. But now I like actually like, hey, want to get my average and kind of like sustained average up to something that I can be proud of. So I think, even if you're GM, like that's something now to think about, right? Instead of just one and done. So that's something that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then also too, feel free to reach out to any of us, either Instagram, elsewhere. I know you can email classification@usbsa.org. That goes to Rick. But if you have any questions about the system, feel free to email that, and he can, he's on the committee, but he can bring it up to the rest of the committee if you have any good questions there. I know we have another big proposal and a big paper explaining all the math and stuff that should be rolling out here at the next board meeting here in I don't know, is it 2 weeks from now, I think, or a week from now? I'm not sure. But at the next USBSA board meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that'll be good for people to check out, make sure they read, hit you guys up if they got any major questions, like a smooth brain people who need help with math. I recommend every listener to listen to this show. Get out there, be informed, read what they're proposing. Read the whole thing. Don't read just the highlight lines like I did at first, and get some information and reach out to these guys and get your questions answered. Billy, Kurt, guys, I really appreciate the fun time we've had tonight talking about these topics, and I appreciate you guys. If people actually want to reach out to you guys directly, where are the best places for them to reach out to you guys?
You can find me pretty much anywhere under Spectrain. Instagram is probably the biggest one. It's Spectrain_NC. You'll have to type out every single letter before it shows up because of meta things. But you can find me on there or hit up the website or whatever.
You can probably reach out to me at McKenna Shooting on Instagram. That's at MCKENNA_shooting, spelled out completely. And probably the same thing. I'm sure I'm shadow banned by Instagram. Or at Competition Shooting Analytics, if you're aware of my Instagram there. Either way, that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Those are good ways to get a hold of everybody. If you guys got questions, hit these guys up. And I say at the end of every show, get out and do the things. I'll see you guys on the next one.